Hello, everyone. This video will be covering Chapter 15 on career psychology and career counseling. Just to begin, we'll do some announcements quick. The first announcement is that there are only 3 more chapters left, which mean there are only 3 more reading reflections left. So if you need to be doing some reading reflections, please remember to do those. Um, yes, because there's only 3 chapters after today. Other announcements, Exam 2 scores will be posted online later today, so be checking your exam scores. I've also, as noted in the email, I'm giving out 2 extra credit points because 2 of the items just on the item analysis didn't come up as quality items. So I've added 2 extra credit points there. I'm still grading your theory paper. I will hand that back hopefully before Monday, but probably by Monday at the latest. Um, so one thing to note is that be careful about APA format. So make sure to do citations for any claims you make in the paper. So if you say Freud was born in 1800, where did you get that information? This is an incorrect statement, but you have to cite any claims that you made. So anything that you didn't know before going into this class, anything that your parents wouldn't know or grandparents wouldn't know, you should be citing to say where you got to show where you got that information. That doesn't mean you quote these things, but you should put in the in-text citation. Please reach out to me if you have questions about that. And then finally, just make sure that you're following instructions. So you can split it into the sections for the role play paper. Because some of you didn't follow the rubric or the instructions very well. So for your role play paper, most of you are all done with your role play now. Um, try not to procrastinate on the paper itself. I've sent you the link to review your video. You'll be needing this for a particular section of the paper. If you look at the assignment, there are different parts to the paper. So the first section, you're going to talk about just the overview of the session. You might talk, and then it's in section 2 where you're going to transcribe word for word some of the session that you did when you were the counselor. So you're going to type, I asked this question, then you write the question, and then, client said that, counselor said this. So you can just sort of annotate it, client, counselor, and so on. That's where you'll have to review the video and watch your section. The next section is self as counselor, where you're talking about what it was like to be the counselor. This is the research section. There's a lot of points on this section, so just make sure that you're adding in 4 academic references here, not including the textbook. Fifth section is about what it was like being the client, and then 6 is sort of a reflection of counseling in general. So here are the points possible. As you can tell that you're using 4 or more references adds up to 10 points. And then all the other 6 sections have points as well. So let me know if there's any questions. This is posted on Blackboard for your role play paper, and it's due May 1st. That's all the announcements. Please check your emails for any additional announcements. Today, we're going to be talking about career psychology and career counseling, which is part of Chapter 15. Remember that the other chapter, Chapter 5, which is also going to be on Exam 3, I've already covered, and that's really talking about the role of work, the role of careers and things in people's lives. So there's a lot of link between Chapter 5 and Chapter 15. So please remember to review Chapter 5 before starting this chapter. One thing to note is that career is actually a term that emerged after vocational psychology. It came out in the late 1950s with one of the theorists that we'll talk about today, which is Super. The name of the theorist is Super. So what we'll be talking about are the 3 sort of types of career theories. We have trait theories, which the main one we'll talk about is Holland and Holland codes. We'll then go into developmental theories like Super's theory, and then we have social learning theories, which we'll do Crumbolt's social learning theory. So we're going to start with trait theories and Holland's theory of vocational personalities and work environments. So Holland developed this theory. It has had lots of different names, but basically it's about finding a personality for someone, what they're like, how they like to work, and trying to fit them into a specific work environment. And so this is why we call it a trait-oriented theory, a personality trait, if you want to think of it that way. Like someone has a particular trait and they're trying to match with a trait from a work environment. So maybe a work environment is very chaotic and someone likes that trait in a work environment. Or maybe a work environment is very stable and someone else likes that sort of traits. So historically, how Holland envisioned this theory is that there should be a match between someone's personal traits and their job environment. So if there's a better fit, that would be called a better congruence in psychology terms in Holland's theory. So basically, Holland thought that an individual's personality is the primary factor in how people choose careers. If someone is extroverted, they might choose a career that has to do with a lot of people. Maybe it's being a server, maybe it's working in a busy stock exchange or something like that. So, and if someone's more introverted, they might pick a different type of career that deals less with people. And so Holland developed these types of interest inventories where you gauge people's interest in different careers. And these are, in fact, personality inventories. Often these have sort of stereotypical views of occupations. So if you think about a stereotypical dentist or a stereotypical gardener or farmer, these are going to play into what is commonly thought of with these jobs, and it has some research as well as which type of people end up choosing these jobs. So before it was more black and white about matching these personality traits to job environments, but the newer look on Holland's theory is that instead of matching people's abilities and traits to the job requirements, they're going to focus on people's perceptions of themselves. So how they think of themselves and how they think about various jobs, and see if there's a match there. According to Holland's theory, people who find work environments that are congruent with themselves will flourish. So if they find an environment where they seem to be a good fit, they have to, let's say they love a challenge and they love solving problems. Maybe they'll find a job where they're an IT consultant and solving tech issues all day. And that would be a good fit for them because they're inquisitive, they like solving problems. And so, again, with Holland's theory, you're trying to match people with their perception of themselves and how they think about various jobs. And again, the idea is that the more congruent between the two, the job and the person, the better the fit. And then if someone does not have congruence, they would be considered incongruent. This might lead to difficulties. People might become dissatisfied. So Holland ended up dividing jobs into 6 prominent categories. This includes all sorts of occupations, all sorts of jobs, and he fit them into these sort of six boxes. And so because there's six of them, he put them in the hexagon. And the six categories are realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. And if you take these six categories and put the first letters together, turns into the RIASEC model. So realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. So let's go through each one of these. The first is realistic. People and jobs who are realistic and get put into this sort of category are very objective, they're concrete, and often they're doing something physical. So things like agriculture, being a mechanic, trade jobs, engineering, things that involve a lot of motor skills, machines, tools, athletics. These would be put in the realistic category. The next set of jobs are investigative. So these type of jobs deal with an environment by using reason and intellect, ideas, words, symbols. So a researcher would be high in the investigative category. The next category of jobs are artistic jobs. These jobs deal with the environment by creating art and different products. So a photographer would be an example of a realistic job. And these rely on subjective impressions about situations. They rely on creativity. Vocations include music, art, literature, drama. The next category is social. These sorts of jobs use social skills to interact and relate to others. These jobs include education, therapy, religious vocations, coaches, ministers. E stands for enterprising. Enterprising jobs are ones that are adventurous, that are high, fast-paced. People might need persuasion skills, being somewhat socially aggressive, like salespeople, to try to find new opportunities and work towards those opportunities. So entrepreneurs would be an enterprising category. And the sixth category is conventional. Conventional jobs have right and wrong answers. They like to put things in order. So like an accountant would be a conventional job. Often there's clear tasks that they have to do, whether it's clerical tasks or computational tasks. So these are the six job types. And the strong interest inventory is one of the ways that you can look up jobs on these scales. And I'm going to pull up a few websites that we can look at in a little bit. But a few things to note about this model. So Holland puts it into a hexagon for a reason. And so depending on someone's score on their inventory, they will come out with a top 3. And I sent out a link for you to do this. I'm going to pull it up right now. All right, so if you want to go to this website, the mynextmove.org/explore/IP, this is a way to fill out your interest profile. It's a 60-item question set that will gauge your interest and give you a result. So when you get this, We'll come back. So pause here, take the interest profiler at mynextmove.org/explore/IP, and you'll come back with your top 3 scores. So for example, here is my score on the RIASEC. I scored highest in social, next highest in investigative, next highest in artistic. So I would have the score of RIA. So I hope that you were able to do your score. Again, you can find those on these 2 websites, the mynextmove.org, and then we'll also have you explore this ONET, which is finding different careers based on some of those categories. So once you've done those, we'll come back to here. So on the hexagon, let's say someone scored an R and an I. These are right next to each other on the hexagon, so that would be a consistent score because these two, they're placed next to each other because they have a lot in common. There's some overlap between things that tend to be people who like realistic jobs also tend to like investigative jobs. However, if someone had an RS score, so their top 2 scores were realistic and social, this would be deemed an inconsistent score. So again, this is because personality types or jobs that are sort of next door to each other are the most alike. So R and I would be closer alike than R and E or R and S. So types that are most unlike each other are going to put across the hexagon. As you might guess just based on the knowledge of these 6 different types, there are fewer jobs available that combine the opposites. So if you're looking for both a conventional and artistic job, that would be harder than finding a conventional realistic job or an artistic investigative job. So it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with that. It just might mean that there's less potential jobs out there that are sort of using both of the skills on the opposite sides of the hexagon. And if jobs that don't combine these opposites, if there are jobs that can't be found that have these opposites, it may be better to assist someone to choose one of the 2 areas for work and attempt to use the other area in their home life or leisure activities. Also, based on your profile, you'll look at the difference between the highest and lowest scores. So on this person's profile, R, I, and A are pretty low, S and E are high, and C is low. So there's a high difference between these scores. It's clear that this person really likes social and enterprising activities, the S and the E. However, if someone's flat across the board, R, I, A, they're all sort of about equal, that would be a little differentiation profile. And that might mean a few things. It might mean that someone doesn't know what they're interested in, so they haven't really developed one strong interest. It might mean that they'd be happy in a lot of different jobs, and it's not that one stands out. So if a profile has high consistency, so they're next to each other, and high differentiation, so a few profiles really stand out, this has more predictability in finding success and satisfaction. Again, that doesn't mean it's impossible to find success and satisfaction for someone who has a flat profile or low consistency. It just might mean that this type of coding isn't going to be as helpful for them. And this research model, this RIASEC model, has been validated in diverse samples and translated into many languages. There are small differences based on race and ethnicity, but overall, this has been found to be a predictive model. The one interesting piece is that there do seem to be substantial differences based in gender. And this might be due to our gender socialization and what is sort of deemed acceptable for your gender. In terms of research, there's the highest support for the actual codes themselves as defining those um, jobs in these various categories. And there's less support for consistency, congruency, and differentiation. So this slide. I want you to I'll hop on and find a job on this ONET because I want to talk about that a little bit as well.